7 o'clock. I will now call to order the November 2nd meeting of the Amity City Council. Please rise and join me in the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Thank you. Councilor Bojorquez, present. Councilor Acie Dunlap, Councilor Dyche, present. Councilor Cody is absent. Councilor McArthur, present. Councilor Denis Saucier is absent, and Mayor Bojorquez here. Thank you. We'll start the evening off with the consent agenda. I move to approve the consent agenda. Second. Okay, motion to approve the consent agenda has been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, please signify by saying no. Motion passed. We'll move on to citizen comments and questions this evening. This is an opportunity for the items not on the regular agenda. Please state your name and address and limit your comments to 3 minutes. And we'll start out this evening with the Yamhill County Sheriff.
I'll speak as loud as I can. Here on behalf of the third class for the family obligations today. But I want to put that trunk or treat went really well for us. So I'd like to bring out Andy, you have to go back some more. So he wanted to say that really just went out well. There was really no call for service. I think there was 2 calls, the same small cell time, same elderly was a little too serious. So other than that, there's nothing else to report.
Is there any questions from council? No. So our deputies have been doing really well about monitoring at the schools during morning time. But just in light of recent events, I wanted to ask if there would also be more patrol on the highway and highway crossings during that time. That would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
If there's nothing else, thank you for being here this evening. Thank you. And do we have a dig report this evening?
Oh, no, I don't believe there's a report.
Okay. So at this time, we'll invite any other audience members to come up and comment.
Who wants to go first?
Here or just where?
Okay.
I'm running for state representative, which includes the city of Amity. And Sharp has been your representative or currently is, but with the redistricting, District 24 is now the city of Amity, and then Sharp is the eastern border and beyond. So I am running as Republican nominee. I'm from this area. I grew up out in Willamina, between Willamina and Sheridan on the farm. So strong ag roots, timber. Went to college at Linfield, got a degree in education. Worked as a teacher for a bit, but the last 20 years I've been in business. My family and I have multiple small businesses throughout the state. And what really got me into wanting to do this is just the government overreach and lots of mandates that have affected our small businesses. Right now, our economy is something that can definitely use some cleaning up, and I think that probably resonates with everyone. And so I just really would love your vote. I would love to be a state representative. It could be a champion for your voice. And I look forward to just talking with any of you that would like to talk and tell me what issues are super important to you. So thanks. And don't forget to vote Tuesday, the 8th is the last day.
Do we have any others from the audience or on Zoom that would like to come up for citizen comment? Yes.
I'm here in town. Louder, all right. I'm Caleb Shields, live here in town, and I'm running as a write-in for city council. And I just want to serve. Want to be involved and be informed and don't really have an agenda to help right now. So that's it.
Well, thank you for your words. Thanks for being here tonight. I don't see any others, so we'll move on to old business, of which tonight there is none. So we'll go right into new business, and item A is Counselor Saucier's resignation. So as you can see in your packet, I received an email on October 19th expressing from Denis Saucier that he's no longer serve. So with that, I'll ask for a motion to approve the resolution. I move to approve Counselor Saucier's resignation. We have a motion and a second to approve Counselor Saucier's resignation. Is there any further discussion? At this time, I do want to add, he does appear on the Amity ballot as running for city councilor. So, my assumption is that we will vote for him if he will run. At that time, if he's elected in that process, our elections officer and the county clerk will reach out and he will have to decision whether he wants to accept that nomination or not. So if there is no further questions or discussion, all those in favor of accepting the resignation, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, please signify by saying no. We'll move into the auditor's presentation in this fiscal year 2021-22.
Real quick, I'd like to introduce Russell Rise, our new CPA. He is going to go over the draft of our audit.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Again, Russ Reese with Gerard Seaver Pollard CPAs out of Weston, Oregon. Pleased to present the results of the City of Amity's audit for fiscal year June 30, 2022. What I thought I'd do, because there's a lot of information, especially due to the fact that the city has implemented a change in accounting principle going from modified cash to full accrual. So what I thought I'd do is I'll talk about our independent auditor's report. I'll briefly cover the basic financial statements, highlight one of the newer required supplementary information items, which is in regards to the city's participation in the Oregon First program. Maybe touch on the supplemental information, which basically is just your budget to actual on the various funds. Probably won't cover that in too much detail. This year, because the city expended more than $750,000 in federal assistance, the city was required to go through not only an audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, but it also had to go through an audit in accordance with general government auditing standards, or the yellow one and a single one. So I'll touch on the results of that audit and programs that were identified as major programs which were required to be audited, and then kind of close with the final report that we issued, which is the Oregon Minimum Standards Report, which is required on an annual basis, which again requires some additional internal control, evaluation, and compliance issues for Oregon municipal corporations. So what I thought I'd do is just quickly turn to page 2. I'm going to quickly just highlight some of the information that's included in the independent auditor's report. If you were to compare this report to last year's report, one of the main differences is the fact that the city is now reporting on reporting or using US GAAP instead of modified cash. So there is no subsection dealing with the explanation that the city uses what's called a special purpose financial model, which is the modified cash basis. You'll also note this year that, again, turning to page 2 at the very top, the very first subsection in our independent auditor's report is the opinions, which is obviously the most important aspect of our independent auditor's report. So when looking at the opinions paragraph, the second paragraph, it's in our opinion that the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, the business type activities, and each major fund of the city of Amity as of June 30, 2022, and the respective changes in financial position and where applicable cash flows. They're for the year then ended in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. So in a nutshell, what we are saying is that the city is receiving an unmodified or clean opinion on their financial statements, on your financial statements. And I think that's consistent with prior years. So we didn't find anything that went against accounting principles under US GAAP. Nor did we find any internal control issues which could rise to the level of significant deficiency or material weakness that if we found such an issue, we'd be required to report it not only in the minimum standards report on the back, but it could also be included in the single audit report. So again, the city is receiving a clean or unmodified opinion on its financial statements. I'm going to flip over to the first basic financial statement, which is on page 10, statement of net position. This statement, again, is on US GAAP, and it is on the full accrual basis of accounting, and it presents assets, deferred outflows, liabilities, deferred inflows, and the net position of the city within two main categories: the governmental activities of the city and the business type activities of the city. The business type activities of the city, again, are all of the water and sewer funds on a combined basis, and the governmental activities are the general fund and all the other remaining funds, excluding the water and sewer fund. So if you look, and I'm just going to focus on the total, which is the combination of both the governmental and the business type activities on a full accrual basis. The city had total assets of $20,893,028. Deferred outflows for pension-related items associated with the first program of $80,389. Total liabilities as of June 30, which again on the full accrual basis includes accrued interest payable, compensated absences, the city's proportionate share of the net pension liability with the Oregon FERS program, and then short and long-term debt. The city's total liabilities at June totaled $10,571,711. We also had deferred inflows for Oregon FERS pension-related items of $258,942. And when we take our assets and our deferred outflows and we subtract the liabilities and deferred inflows, the result is the net position of the city, which again, as of June 30, on a full accrual basis, the equity was $10,142,764. Now, going back 20 years ago, GASB 34 came out, and what GASB 34 did was require municipalities to basically present two sets of financial statements. Municipalities are required to present the traditional fund balance or the fund presentation, which was pre-GASB 34, which is a current resource and use focus, and also provide a government-wide set of financial statements on full accrual, which were more comparable to for-profit entities on full accrual US GAAP basis. So again, on page 10, this is our statement of net position, which is the government-wide statement of net position. What I'm going to do now is turn to page 12, which is the city's balance sheet for its governmental funds. And this presentation is under the old model. And again, it only focuses on current assets and current liabilities, and then the related fund balance. And then it does provide a reconciliation between the fund balance on the traditional presentation down to our net position of governmental activities down below. So again, on the traditional presentation, which is simply current assets, again, for governmental funds only, not including the business type activities, which is the water and sewer funds. Total assets of $1,228,623. a very small amount of accounts payable at the end of the year of 28,471. So when we take our assets and we subtract our liabilities, it results in total fund balances, again, for the governmental funds of $1,200,152. That is our starting point on the reconciliation. Now, to get from that fund balance to our net position for governmental activities, we have 3 or 4 various adjustments that are made in that reconciliation process. The first is that on the government-wide statement of net position, we show long-term capital assets. So we're adding to this initial fund balance almost $2 million of net capital assets. Again, that relates to your governmental activities. We then also make various adjustments because of the fact that the city participates in Oregon PERS. There are various deferred inflows and outflows, and there is a net pension liability, which is the city's share. Each year, Oregon PERS goes through a measurement by an actuary firm. And what they do is they take a look at the fair value of the investments maintained within the PERS plan, and then they compare that to the present value of the benefits that have been earned under the PERS program. And when they compare the assets to the present value of what has been earned, if the assets are in excess of the liability, it's a net asset. Unfortunately, with the PERS program right now, it's a net liability. So the plan as a whole has a net pension liability. That total is then allocated to all the participating employers under the Oregon PERS program. But as you'll see, the city of Amity share is very, very minimal compared to some of these other larger municipalities in the state of Oregon. And then finally, the final adjustment relates to long-term liabilities. Those typically are not presented on the balance sheet because, again, they're long-term in nature. But on the full accrual statement of net position, those long-term liabilities are included as a liability on the government-wide statement. The second basic financial statement I was going to walk you through is the statement of activities on page 11. So again, this is the full accrual government-wide presentation of the statement of activities for the net income of the city. It is also segregated between the governmental activities, which is the general fund, and all other funds except for your water and sewer funds. Those are included in business type activities. What's unique about this government-wide statement is the fact that this statement starts off with expenses. We then apply various program revenues against those expenses to come up with a net expense. And then general revenues such as property tax revenues, franchise taxes, intergovernmental revenues are added to that net expense to come up with the city's change in net position. So in looking at the governmental activities down towards the bottom, that column, the change in net position was a deficit balance of about $131,316, which to me is pretty much break even under your governmental activities. On the business type activities column, the change in net position was a positive $1,334,556. And the major reason why it was such a significant positive change in net position for the business type activities was, again, the city recognized some sizable capital grants during the last year, which helped to boost that change in net position. So in looking at both the governmental activities and the business type activities, the city recognized a total positive change in net position on a full accrual basis of $1,203,240. Now, if I flip over to page 13, page 13 presents, again, and this is just the governmental funds, it presents the traditional presentation, which was the pre-GASB 34, statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. So again, this presentation starts off with revenues. We subtract expenditures. We then apply other financing sources and uses to come up with a net change in fund balance. So I'm just gonna look at the total column, because again, this is just dealing with the governmental funds. So again, on the traditional presentation, total revenues, 1,135,947. Total expenditures of $931,799, resulting in revenues in excess of expenditures of $204,148. The governmental funds then also had the general fund had a transfer out of $300,000 to the water and sewer fund. So when we apply that other financing use, our total governmental fund net change in fund balance for the year was a deficit of only $95,852, which again, when we're looking at that change as compared to the change on the government-wide full accrual basis, the change is minimal between the two. Again, pretty much a break-even presentation for both the traditional presentation and under the government-wide full accrual presentation. Again, the adjustments to take us from the traditional presentation to the full accrual presentation for the governmental activities. Again, we had depreciation expense, which is a charge. We added back capital asset additions that normally would be a subtraction under the traditional presentation, but those assets are capitalized and then depreciated on the full accrual presentation. So that's an add back of $38,048. The year-to-year change in the related asset and liability counts for the Oregon FERS plan, that ended up being a positive change year over year of $34,372. And then down towards the bottom, we add back loan principal payments, which on the traditional presentation is a debt service expenditure. But on a full accrual basis, it is a reduction of the long-term liability. So it's not an expenditure on the government-wide presentation, but it is an expenditure under the traditional modified cash basis presentation. I'm just going to quickly cover on pages 14, 15, and 16. We have our combined statement of net position for proprietary funds, which again is the water and sewer funds. So on page 14, this provides detail of the water funds and the sewer funds as a separate presentation, tying out to the total amount, which then ties back to the government-wide presentation. So again, total assets for both the water and sewer funds in total, again, total assets at June 30, $18,099,269. Again, small deferred outflow for Oregon FERS pension items. Total liabilities for the business type activities of $10,375,120, of which the majority of those liabilities again are long-term liabilities. Deferred inflows, again, pension-related items of $126,882. When we take our total assets and our outflows and we subtract liabilities and inflows, it results in our net position on a government-wide basis, again, of $7,636,650.
That's the net position of water and sewer combined, but by themselves.
So the total is,
The
Yeah, that's-
7,636,000.
that's combined, right?
But it's only the water and sewer
Right,
taken out. Okay.
right. Yeah, when we're looking at proprietary funds, those are the business type activities of the city. And so the business type activities of the city include the water activity, the water and the sewer. Yeah. Everything else is a governmental activity. And again, this just provides additional detail on what's being shown in total on both the government-wide statement of net position and the statement of activities. So on page 15, again, we have the detail of operating revenues, operating expenses, non-operating revenues and expenses, the transfers in from the general fund of $300,000. So again, this provides the separation between the water activities and the sewer activities in coming up with our total change in net position of 1,334,556, which again is shown on the government-wide statement or statement of activities. And then on page 16 is the final. This is the final basic financial statement. It shows the combined, again, the water and sewer, the statement of cash flow. So again, this provides information on both the water activities and the sewer activities with the total column showing net cash provided by operating activities, which between both water and sewer total 533,140. Cash flows from capital and related financing activities was again cash provided for the year of $7,731,443. The most sizable positive cash flow again were loan proceeds, which we'll talk about when we quickly cover the long-term debt, the bond anticipation notes of $6,473,000. Again, capital grants also $3,009,483 as well. So when we combine our operating activities, our capital and related financing activities, and our non-capital financing activities, very small investment activities, it resulted in net increase in cash and investments for the year. When I'm looking at both water and sewer combined, positive increase in cash of $8,569,560. Pages 7 through 33 of the required footnote disclosures. And what I'm just going to do is just highlight some of the changes from last year. Most of the footnotes again are consistent with last year, even though the city did change from modified cash basis to US GAAP. What I did want to just quickly touch on, flipping over to page 22, footnote B, the city's cash and cash equivalents footnote. We've updated that for cash on hand and deposits with financial institutions, and then the balance that is maintained within the local government investment pool. So between on hand deposits with financial institutions and the LGIP account, the city had total cash and investments of $10,083,931. Flipping over to page 24, I'm going to highlight a new footnote that's in this year because of the fact of the conversion from modified cash to accrual. We have footnote C, which is capital assets. So the requirement for this footnote is that we have to show, the city has to show the beginning balance, the additions, any disposals, and then the ending balance of its capital assets segregated between its governmental activities and its business type activities. So on page 34 is that reconciliation, strictly looking at the governmental activities. So this again includes capital assets that were acquired or disposed of by all of the funds within the city except for the water and sewer. So again, a very minimal capital outlay last year for the governmental activities funds. I think the total was about 47,000 new additions. Down below, we have depreciation taken on the capital assets this year of $98,725. And our total capital assets net depreciation in strictly looking at the governmental activities, again, balance of June 30, 2022, down at the bottom, was $1,953,730. On page 25, we now flip over to the business type activities of the water and sewer funds. So again, we have our beginning balance as of July 1st, 2021. We have our additions, which totaled, we had construction and progress additions of $1,049,675, the majority of which relates to construction costs associated with the Salt Creek water line project. So the total additions was $1,051,179. We had some prior year construction in progress that was completed and then transferred over to our depreciable capital assets. And those amounts total $562,604, leaving our non-depreciable capital assets at the end of the year of about $1.8 million. Under our depreciable capital assets, we had total additions for the year of just under $1,044,000. And then depreciation taken on assets that are in service for the water system or sewer system, and then the vehicles and equipment, that depreciation totaled $490,974. So our total capital assets, net of depreciation, and strictly looking at the business type activities, totaled $8,315,204. And when we combine that with our governmental activities capital assets, the city's total capital assets for all activities totaled $10,268,943. We've also included some information on the commitments that the city has for construction projects. So the commitments that the city has as of June 30, mainly, I believe mainly given with the Salt Creek Waterline project was approximately $9 million. Page 26, this will be one of the last footnotes I'll highlight, is our footnote D, long-term debt. Now this is not a new note, but we simply updated it for the activity for this year. All I wanted to point out is the fact that, so for the last fiscal year, the city recognized the 2022 bond anticipation notes of $6,473,000. So the issue or the receipt of those proceeds were recognized within the financial statements this year. So looking at the long-term liability, as of June 30, the city had total outstanding long-term debt of $8,222,687, of which only $67,369 is due within the next fiscal year. I don't know if you want me to go into a lot of detail on the first footnote, which goes on and on and on. I think there was a first footnote in the city's financials last year. And because your proportionate share is so small, I guess I'm looking at page 29 at the middle paragraph, pension assets and liabilities. The city reported a net pension liability of only $133,000. That's phenomenal compared to some of these other larger municipalities that are showing millions and millions of dollars of their allocable share of the net pension. So again, you know, looking at that, it's very insignificant when compared to the overall net pension liability of the plan as a whole.
So because we did modify cash basis, every year prior, we did not see the pension liability anywhere in our financial audit.
Oh, really? Because normally what we do is for our clients that are on modified cash, we will include disclosure. We typically put in the footnote something to the effect of, well, we would put something in there saying something like the city would have reported a net pension liability of blank, except for the fact that they are under the modified cash basis.
Right. Yeah, but no, that one reason it was very important to move to this is because the capital asset depreciation and the PERS was never noted in.
Right. So what I'll do too, I'll flip you over to page 35. I don't think this statement was included last year either. So when you are accounting under US GAAP, there are what is it's called required supplementary information that is required under US GAAP, under GASB. And so on page 35, you have two schedules that relate to your participation in Oregon PERS. The top portion is titled the Schedule of Proportionate Share of the Net Pension Liability. These two schedules are going to be a rolling 10-year, a 10-year presentation. We're on year 8. We're on year 7. So once we get to year 10, and then going forward, we'll drop a year and add a year. So there'll be a 10-year presentation of both the proportionate share of the net pension liability that the city is disclosing. It also includes information on the district's covered payroll. And then what is interesting too is the final column is it's the planned fiduciary net position as a percentage of the total pension liability. So what that percentage shows is when I think it's Milliman, who are the actuaries, when they go out and do their annual measurements, they come, again, like I said before, they compare the fair value of the investments that are maintained within the plan. And so they compare the asset with the present value of the earned benefits. So for 2022, that percentage, which actually is not too bad, it's 87.6%. So what that means is that the assets are only short. If it was 100%, yeah, if it was 100%, that would mean that the assets, the fair market value of the assets, absolutely equal the present value of the benefits that have been earned. So at 87%. Again, that is not too bad compared to some of the other plans that have been reporting nationally.
That's better than what I assumed.
Yeah, so you can look, going back to 2016, it was 91%, 92, then it dropped down to 80, and then up to 83, 82. So again, it kind of bounces around. I think one of the main contributing factors in that the percentage bounces around is the fact that the stock market has kind of been going up and down. It's been very volatile. But at least once you get this 10-year period and going forward, you'll have this prior information on that so that you can take a look and see what was our proportionate share of the liability, based upon the plan as a whole. What was our share of the liability? How much covered payroll were we paying into PERS? And then what was the net pension liability as a percentage of covered payroll? The schedule down below is the schedule of contributions. That simply just shows what was the city's statutorily required contribution. So again, that's simply just the compensation that's subject to PERS, and then your required contribution based upon the published employer rates that are provided to you by Oregon PERS. So it provides statutorily required contributions, the amount of contributions that were actually sent in, and then there's a column for any contribution deficiency or excess, and then again provides information on what the employer's covered payroll was, and then finally the contributions as a percentage of covered payroll. The only other footnote I was going to quickly cover is on page 33, really the one big accounting change for entities that are on full accrual is in regards to leases. So you'll see footnote I states that the city has implemented GASB 87 for leases. It had no effect on your financial statements because the city does not have any material leases. And the gist of this GASB 87 is that for material leases, many entities are now required to recognize an intangible asset, which is called a right of use asset, and that's the city's, or that would be the entity's right to use that leased asset, and it will show up as an asset on the government-wide statements. There would also be a corresponding liability on the government-wide assets, and that liability represents the present value of the future lease payments based under the lease term. So we put the note in there saying that yes, the city adopted 87, but it had no effect because you don't have any material leases at this time. Footnote J is the city's restatement of beginning net position fund balances. So this provides the reader with information showing how, if they were to pull last year's audit report and look at the net position and the fund balance, they'd be able to tie those figures to the restated beginning net position and fund balance that the city is now reporting this year on the government or on the full accrual basis of the US GAAP. Let's see. That's the footnotes. Then we had to require supplementary information, and I'm not going to cover this because I'm afraid I'm going over a little bit. So under full accrual, not only do we have required supplementary information in regards to the 10-year PERS information, but we also present the government or the general fund, the budget to actual is presented within this subsection, required supplementary information, which is required for gas. And then the supplementary information contains the budget and actual information for the remaining funds under the budget basis of accounting for the city, which again is now under the modified basis or the traditional presentation. Turning to page 40, we now move into the single audit. So on page 40, the city has its schedule of expenditure for federal awards. So the city last year expended about $1.2 million in federal assistance. So we as auditors, when an entity expends more than $750,000, it triggers a single audit. The single audit, then we look at the various government programs that are reported on the CEPA schedule, and we then pick one or more major programs. So for this year, the city only had one major program, and that was the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Revenue Funds program, the CFDA number 21.27. Total funds under that program totaled $849,183 that were expended this last year. 249,000 was a flow through from the state of Oregon, and 600,000 was flow through funding from Yamhill County. The only other federal expenditures was under the Safe Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, which totaled $362,826. Since that amount did not exceed the $750,000, which is the major program trigger, the single audit was simply focused on that one program, the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Revenue Funds program. So starting on page 42 and going through pages 46, there are two required auditor reports when an entity goes through the single audit. The first is the independent auditor's report on internal control over financial reporting and compliance and other matters based on an audit of financial statements performed in accordance with government auditing standards. I'm not going to bore you with the details. In general, this report contains information on we're required to evaluate and test internal control over financial reporting and to do some compliance work in the area of any laws, rules, or regulations that, if they were violated, would have a material effect on the financial statements. We're pleased to report in this report that, again, we did not note any internal control issues. So the city is getting a clean report on the Yellow Book audit for its internal controls and also on its compliance. So no matters noted. Starting on page 44 and going through 46 is the second independent auditor's report, which is required under the single audit, and that's the independent auditor's report on compliance for each major program and on internal control over compliance required by the uniform guidance. So again, the major program was the coronavirus program. We performed various tests based upon recommendations through OMB that relate directly to this type of program. So again, This report covers two areas. It covers compliance and it also covers internal control. And again, we're pleased to report that we did not note any, there were no findings noted that required to be disclosed in the secondary report as well. So the city is receiving a clean or unmodified opinion on the second single audit report. Page 47 is the schedule of findings and question costs. This basically is a recap of the results, the auditor's results. It provides the reader with information that, again, we reported an unmodified or clean opinion on the city's financial statements. We did not note any significant deficiencies. There were no instances of non-compliance which were material to the financial statements. We didn't note any significant deficiencies in internal control over major federal award programs. The auditor's report on compliance for the major federal award programs was unmodified, which means it was clean. We didn't find anything. Under point 7, we know that the program tested as a major program was a coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds with the applicable CFPA number. Our threshold that was used for distinguishing a type A and type B program was 750,000. Again, once you reach that threshold, that A triggers the audit, and then B, if it's within one program, it triggers that program to be selected as a major program. So again, we just had one. Point 9, this is often confusing. It says the city of Amity was not determined to be a low risk auditee. To be a low risk auditee, an entity has to have gone through single audits in the prior 2 years, which I know for a fact that the city did not have a single audit last year, but it may have had one the year before. But to meet that low risk auditee classification, you have to have 2 years of single audits prior to the year on. So again, it's not a situation where you're getting dinged for something. It's just simply that's the classification that's required to meet that threshold. And it meeting a threshold, oftentimes it helps the auditor. It reduces our scope as far as the level of testing or the amount of dollars that we have to test. Because of the fact that you guys only had the one program that we tested, I don't think it didn't make a difference. And then finally on pages 48 and 49, we have our final report, which is the independent audit report required by Oregon state regulations. This is the Oregon minimum standards report, which again is included in your audits in prior years. So there's additional compliance issues that we're required to take a look at. During the course of our audit, we're required to look at deposit of public funds with financial institutions, your indebtedness limitations and whether or not you've exceeded them, which you haven't, the budgeting process, insurance, programs funded from outside sources, highway revenues used for public highways, roads, and streets, operates investment of surplus funds and public contracts and purchasing. So again, we're pleased to report that we did not note anything during the course of our audit that would be required to be disclosed as a matter that was not in accordance with minimum standards. So again, a clean compliance section. And then again, if we had noticed some kind of internal control issue, which rose to the level of a significant deficiency or material weakness, it would have to be disclosed in this report as well. And like I said before, we did not note any such any situations like that in looking at our audit this year. So again, a clean report on both the compliance side of the minimum standards and the internal control over financial reporting. So at that point, I guess I'm going to open up your questions. Is now a good time? And then again, I list some business cards too. So if there are questions later on, feel free to contact my office, and I'd be pleased to go through any specific questions. But if anyone has questions right now, fire away.
Is there questions for the council? Because I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the auditor's findings. I just want to bring up two very insignificant things on this draft.
Oh, sure.
So the last two pages, as you noted,
Right,
are
yeah.
48 and 48.
Yep.
And then also when we have our list of city officials, we have, Councilor Bojorquez, her name is spelled wrong and her term actually expired in 2024.
Oh, okay, so,
So very minor,
Oh,
other
no.
than that.
so 2024, I'll fix that, and then, yeah, so I'll fix that.
I was worried about the numbers.
So I just, it's a BOJ, not BOR.
BOJORQU.
You got it. No, I will fix that. And then really all we have as far as wrapping up the engagement is because you have to send a lot of, we fill out a data collection form that's uploaded to the US Federal Clearinghouse. So basically the data collection form is a summary of what we came up with our audit. It includes information on the CETA schedule. Once the audit is approved, we upload a copy of the audit, which is attached. Then we as the auditors and Mike as the auditee will certify that the information that has been uploaded is correct. And then once that certification process is done, it goes on to the clearinghouse and then it goes through a series of checks to make sure that the information is presented correctly. And I don't think in all my years of doing this, I don't think we've ever had an issue of basically following the instruction and getting the information entered correctly. So that's really just the final piece. And then again, once everything is reviewed and approved, we'll provide pound copies, as many as you want, along with a summary of revenues and expenditures that gets sent to the state of Oregon. We then provide a PDF file of the audit report, which can be provided to the state. They upload it to their website. It's the audits division website. And again, that all has to be done on or before December. It's typically December 31st. I think this year it might run over to January 2nd or 3rd. Based on, but yeah, this is gonna be better.
So I'll ask you quickly if there's any questions while he's here. And with that, I just want to thank you not only for your work on this, work with our staff, but also for being here tonight.
Absolutely.
We appreciate it.
And again, any questions? And then again, any questions that come, feel free to give me a holler. Definitely. No, the records are fantastic. I mean, for the first year, it went amazingly well.
Yeah, it was a lot smoother.
Especially with that, and the conversion too. And you know, I've been doing it for a long time. And so, you know, I deal with municipalities that are strictly cash basis, like a modified cash basis. And then I have quite a few accruals, so, or full accruals. So it's, but I think the full accrual basis does provide a truer picture of what's going on. Whereas the modified cash basis, especially if the disclosures are weak, we typically booster the footnotes for modified cash basis to provide that information to the readers. But again, the full accrual US GAAP basis is a fair presentation, provides a lot more information to the state.
No, personally, I feel really good about the information that we were able to see and then that we didn't have. So thank you for your work.
Thank you very much.
So Kathy, what's been on here
Oh.
this whole time, she wanted to say great audit, super job and nice presentation.
Thank you very much.
So with that, thank you very
All right,
much.
take care.
I'll have council look at the recommended motion.
I move to approve the auditor's findings to approve Amity's fiscal year 2021-2022.
Second. There's been a motion to approve the auditor's findings and approve the Amity's fiscal year 2021-2022 audit. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, please signify by saying no. Motion passed. We'll move on to the next item of new business, which is Oregon Mayor's Association recommendation on the.
Okay, so there's the Oregon Mayor's Association, my next bill motion.
No, please
He has sent a letter to the state, basically saying that the number one problem in this state right now is homelessness, and they presented a bunch of recommendations as to how to fix it. One was a budget package that provides direct allocation to cities for homelessness, response and prevention services, and two, a budget package that provides capital improvement funding for cities. It's a two-page letter which is in there, but to summarize, there'd be a cash payout from the state funds to each city based off of its population. And Amity would receive $72,306 based off of this calculation that the mayors are presenting. And in that matter, the Mayor's Association is basically seeking support from each community for their proposal. They would like us to chime in with the League of Oregon Cities as our, basically the city's lobbying group by November 4th. So that'd be this Friday, whether we are in support of this measure and basically want to have Mayor King sign in concurrence with the letter and go from there. So I'll turn it back to the Mayor King.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just add that this is something that I personally am in support of, but also it will be going to the state either. There's a lot of support. There's been a lot of work done. This task force has worked hard to move this forward. In light of the fact that there's not other legislation moving forward to make positive changes, I think it would be important to sign on at this point. It doesn't mean that it will happen, but it means that we're willing to do what we can to support the action.
Every time you hear about the homeless population, and I'm not trying to say you're in area, bigger the city, more the problem. But they're always saying, support group. Do we have any support groups they're referring to in this town?
There are resources. Most local resources right now would require you to go to McMinnville. I don't personally know about, churches that might have or support groups that might meet. I know there are resources. We have like a few food banks in town. But what this plan is actually calling for is to help cities have funding to set up those types of resources. Because it does fall back on cities to say, what are you doing? What resources are there? But if you don't have the funding, if you're asking the city of Amity, what are you doing? It's really hard to do when we don't have funds to spend towards providing. I hope that answers your question. I don't know that we have any support.
You did, it didn't, because you're saying we don't have the resources. And this actually comes down to the people themselves that are what funding they might get. And the council comes in the middle of this in the end. What is the council in general thinking of doing?
Well, there's a whole list here, but one of the things that would be authorized through this is to grant these funds to, the neighborhood partners that are already doing it. So we could use that for food banking systems. We could do that to have outreach workers. Prevention is a very broad category, but right now it's just support and going to the state saying, we think this should happen.
I'm not just agreeing with what they're saying. I'm just trying to see if we've got a base within the town to support what they're thinking. And the main things they're thinking right now, and I'm using organized a maybe not that I agree with what they're thinking. Maybe because I think it's too big. When they're talking about the numbers of people in a community, they're talking about a community bigger than we are.
But we need to make decisions based on our community and our city, right, right now.
It's different than the people that are here.
I think that the program has the opportunity to help people, and the list of things that are on that. There are many, I mean, some of the things that were listed on there are things that we've been talking about, like nuisance. Abatement and cleanup, our food banks. There's, I mean. Community resource officers, there's, lots of things listed on there, hygiene stations. So a lot of things that are listed on there that we've been talking about. So I think that those are all things that could be incorporated in there. It's not just talking about, housing options or, there's lots of things that could be done. And right now, we're just looking at whether or not we want to support possible funding measures.
One thing that popped into my head very quickly was that Amity is one of the only small cities in Yamhill County that doesn't have warming and cooling shelters during extreme weather. And it's because we don't have a way to heat this building or cool this building or simple things like that, that we're not able to go, it's not above and beyond. We're not able to provide those things for our citizens because we don't have the time. So I would be in support of any work that's being done to move that forward. So I guess at this time, I would just ask for support from the council or not, to be able to sign on with the board and mayor's position.
I move to support the OMA efforts and notify the LOC of our support by November 5.
There has been a motion and a second to support the OMA effort and notify the LOC of our support by the November 4th deadline. Is there further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, please signify by saying no. Thank you. We are on item B, city employees ARPA fund premium.
All right. So this one's kind of an unusual one. It's a one-time deal. Since we've had a lot of staff wear and tear over the past 2 years, the city staff is looking at how they kind of provide premium pay and to support our city staff throughout all the work they've done for the past 2 years. And more so recently, since we've now lost a couple of people through job changes and retirements, et cetera, et cetera. So we had discussed potentially using a portion of the remaining ARPA funds that we have in the general funds set aside basically to provide a premium pay, which is allowed under the January 2022 U.S. Treasury final rule to give a premium pay reward for employees for service during COVID-19 darkest hours. I've negotiated this with the city staff, HR, Mayor King, and at this point, I'm recommending a one-time salary payment for employees in accordance with that section of the Treasury rule. And we're eligible because I can, by those rules, we can categorize the work being done as emergency response, maintenance, state, local, tribal government workforce. They qualify as having served in person, but we never really shut down City Hall. We only restricted access, but we still had people coming in for the entire year. We had face-to-face engagement, and we had regular interactions with the public. We only did a minimum amount of Zoom council meetings that I believe a couple of you were in on. So you remember that we went back to in person with masks pretty quickly. So all those stated we can, and they all fall under the 150% of their salary for the average, which is in the chart I provided in section A. So with that being stated, I'm recommending that the 6 city employees that served during COVID be rewarded for the breakout there and document for a total of $30,000 in payouts. And the money would be provided to the employees, as mentioned, either at the end of sorry, the December 1st or January 1st pay period. And that would be basically covered, so. Last but not least, I am not eligible for the premium pages, so I'm not doing this for myself. Not only am I not eligible, I just don't want the money, so I'm under a different contract, so that it's not just. I ruled out the potential refactor in money, so this is really for the employees. But other than that, I'm open for questions.
Before that, I just want to steal a little bit of my thunder this time. There's been, I ask frequently where we have our funds and what's remaining. And this was also something that I brought up to him to look into, to see if he was comfortable with, and if we could check it against the final goal, just for retention and acknowledgement of these new employees that have been here through the last 2+ years nonstop that the city has relied on. And so it is my recommendation after I called with the hair braiding idea and said, hey, could you maybe look into this? Because the discussion was really how this small group of employees really needs to be acknowledged. And this is an eligible use of that.
Is Gary part of that group,
Gary Aiken, yes. Gary Mathis, no.
the gentleman left?
Those are you not currently employed. It can only be for currently employed.
The change, because he was here through the whole thing.
Yes, sir, but
I think I asked the question, since he isn't here now, I was hoping he could be.
The treasury's final rule is that it needs to be current employee.
I figured it was some kind of. I had to ask the question, because the man was here and did spend the time with everybody else.
Yeah.
You know, it's those small things.
I really like Uncle waiting on this, your feelings and opinions. Before. For you all, make sure you take the decision. December.
And this, since we met, it was meant. I had a first December paycheck.
well, it can be.
That's their cuts and flows. I know that a lot of people have that in order to do it. That's the reason I'm asking the question. I'm just trying to keep the employee a Christmas moment.
So the difference between the December pay, presenting this premium pay to the employees either in December or January is basically a tax basis. They will get taxed on this money. And
One's this year, one's next year.
so if they get it in December, they'll pay the taxes in April. If they get it in January, they'll pay the taxes April 2024 when the federal tax code will change, and they may actually pay less taxes on this money. So that's the change of. Tasha, representing HR, did recommend a potential split where they get half in December, half in January. We can negotiate that too. But
Whatever.
There also maybe half this year, half next year, it has to be spent by the end of 2024. I mean, this is really just presented to council for this. I know Mike's recommending it. I also think that we should have acknowledgement that it's upon the council.
I think it's a great use of retention and hazard pay and acknowledgement of the line with staying open. And it is a very small staff that we have in place in the city. That was very strange. It's not just because of COVID, but also in normal things of COVID, having family members sick, themselves sick, and still, working. Great problem. It still leaves funds in there to happen from now until the past. It's not wiping it out. It's, it makes sense in this situation. I have mixed feelings on it. I mean, I think it's great to reward our employees, that I also find mixed feelings on positive bonuses for public employees. I mean, I understand that they work really hard and do lots of small staff, so on that regard, I that deserve it. That's why I said it's
I would also advocate for this in the sense that with Gary Mathis' departure, the burden on the staff is only going to get is increasing, and it was brought to my attention by some of the employees that this funding, this payment would be both kind of a reward of premium pay for what they've already done, but also acknowledgement of pay. And that's why the timing is the way it is. It's also, hey, we understand it's going to get worse before it gets better. So here's a little bit something to kind of acknowledge that you're going to be, we're all going to be stepping up to the plate a little bit longer until we hire a public works superintendent, which based off the conversations I had this morning could take up to 6 months to hire a new public works superintendent. So we could be short staffed for a considerable period of time, which puts the burden, the significant burden on public works, but additionally on Acie and Chrissy to a certain extent. So,
I think it's worth noting too that in order to qualify, it says the employees must be earning, including the premium pay that is being suggested, at or below 150% of the residing state or county's average annual wage. So our employees are extremely underpaid for an annual living wage. This is a one-time benefit of putting in the hard work that we're able to offer.
So that's okay. Like Wayne, our employees, part of the. With that, I'll ask for a motion on the agenda item.
I would approve a one-time premium pay compensation to market funds to the city of Amity employees as presented to the city administration.
We have a motion and a second to approve the recommendation of one premium pay rewarding ARPA funds, in about $30,000 to the family employees as presented in the city administrator's report. Is there further discussion?
I want to clarify, are we talking about all of it this year, or are we talking about? I would think this will probably be easier on all the employees to split.
So that's not
That was
defined in the motion.
Yeah, I thought that would just be discussed.
the way I interpreted this, and you obviously it's your decisions, but was that you would approve the obligation of these funds, and then between staff and HR, we would determine whether the majority prefer a one-time payment in December, a one-time payment in January, or a split payment in December and January, and we would leave it to the detail. However, you have the right to make that determination.
I just didn't know if you needed it defined for work purposes.
It's up to you.
Any other? Okay, seconding, because I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, please signify by saying no. We're on to item E, tree removal. Mike, you can have this one as well.
This one's actually almost overcome by events. The property owner at the 212 Stanley Street wanted to work with the city to remove a poplar tree that was about 195 feet tall, I think she said, that is straddling the property line between a city's alleyway easement and her private property. She had come to us before about this, and Gary Mathis had basically demurred and pushed it off. She came to me and I said, we'd work with her to meet her halfway on the cost. She came back with a cost estimate last week or 2 weeks ago now, and basically said she can't afford her half. So she stalled on this until such time that she can afford her half of the payment. Guidance I got from their king was that we would go have these up to a certain point and no further, and if we went further than that to cover her half, that we would be out of the guidance of the council. So we basically shelved this project until such a time that the costs come down and we can be addressed. So this is more or less overcome by events circumstance, but 3-4 months from now, we may see that poplar tree come down and this is why.
Any other questions for that? Okay, we will then move on to department reports.
Want to thank everyone who did the harvest party. That was a huge hit. I know it's in my report already, but there were a lot of people that helped out. Also Council Bojorquez and her family, Mayor King and her family, an extended family. Tasha was out there. We had a couple other volunteers that showed up in person, and they were involved. It was a wonderful occasion. We got Heiser Farm that donated our pumpkins. Aaron Rainey donated our hay bales, and Amity Elementary School also helped us making signs. So it was a really big event. So I want to thank everyone that was part of that. I also want to thank the Amity Public Library for their book retreat. From what I understand, it's also a huge hit with a lot of hard work behind that one. Finally, I had one comment from Council Goings, who asked me to make this if he was not here. He had a recommendation for next year's Halloween. If council would consider shutting down Goucher in order to allow prevent traffic from going up and down that street in order to give more space to the kiddos going to the trunk or treat at the church there. So I told him I'd bring this up to council and just have you guys consider it. There's no motion, there's no requirement, it's just something he wants us to consider for next year. Since he quote, I was dodging the cars with the kids walking down Delta.
And being the street I live on, it was not a safe situation. All the drivers, and pedestrians did really well considering, but it would be much safer. It would be much safer, I think. You know, whenever they do that, they say like local traffic only, but I think local traffic is the issue. So I think if we just plan ahead of time and let people know,
You would have to figure out a situation.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so the other Goucher Street on the other side of the street has a little gravel driveway, or we could talk to the school.
Talk to the school about parking in that parking lot.
Yeah.
But we also need to consider accessibility for those who still face more.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's gonna be exceptions. Okay, I took note, but if you all could remember that as it comes back to that. as well.
Other than that, I have other comments and staying by the trust.
Anything else for Mike, please? Tasha, we have your report. Anything to add?
I was gonna take everybody to the last item that was, I asked my question for that. And also for all the volunteers and really nice having everyone's help this year because it's a lot of work. I want to say thank you for your help with getting the audit. Oh, thank you. Because that was a change this year and I know, I think she works hard. I was very nervous.
She's been paranoid about this audit ever since we said we were gonna change it up.
Yeah.
It went very
We've all
smoothly.
been holding up. Yeah,
I know.
Holding
When
back.
I talk to managers, I'm like.
But I appreciate you
Thank
for
you.
doing all
And he came in under budget.
that.
Was there a public works report?
No, I did not get one, but, I sent you most of the public record, sorry, in correspondence with the mayor, I sent most of the public works issues to her today. Quickly summarized, we had a lot of projects that were, left hanging, for lack of better words, with Gary Mathis' departure. I finally tabulated all those projects that what I thought they were and then presented as a public works, and they're going to see if they can chip through a lot of those. One of them was to fix street lights that were out on trade down by the. There were a couple by the Visit Terrace and then a couple down by Henry Market. I think those are getting fixed now. And they should have been fixed by now, so they're chipping away through those. And then there was actually, you have the contracts in your hands, Martina, for the DRC, we finally secured the contract with the DRC, he agreed to that, so she signed it, we'll sign it, have a DRC. And also the conversation we had with Public Works and Workforce Oregon representative who's doing our recruiting for us pro bono because it's a state funded process. He basically said, yeah, this could be a long, difficult process. And I said, well, how long? He goes, months, if not longer. And I was like, so like 6, he goes, maybe. Hence my 6-month comment earlier, that's where that came from. So we could be having a pain trying to get new people here. So I brought up a plan, basically, if we're still without a public works superintendent in 4 or 5 months, kind of some ideas, brainstorming them now, that's reminded of them later. Things that we should do to essentially try and get a hire on as quickly as possible.
And I'll just say Mike has really taken in the situation and laid out to our public works department priorities that need to be met, but also been supportive in knowing that, those are going to get rearranged. And then also just the outlook and planning ahead, like if we get to this point and this hasn't happened, we'll do this. So Mike, I want to thank you for that because it's kind of all uncharted territory. The unfinished list he sent our way was a 25-point list of things that are going to be worked through, and they will, but it's going to take time and patience from all of us in the city because we have 2 really dedicated workers that can literally only do so much within that.
And we know you guys are gonna be extra busy in the office, Saucier, taking on a lot of things.
She's going to do some of the clerical work for them, which is extra on her. Or just as some things that are probably going to be lower prioritized. Curb painting was requested at one point. That's probably going to paint the yellow and red stripes in the curb. That's probably going to fall down the priority list. When I told the team, their number 1 priority, number 2 priorities are the safe, effective, and efficient collection, delivery, distribution, treatment and discharge of water and wastewater. Meet all regulatory requirements. Their number 2 priority is managing the USDA and other requirements. So talking to those guys this morning, that could be about 85 or 90% of what they with. So not a lot of the slack.
We will push through the individual things. We do have, we are on the lookout. There's a lot of people seeking public works superintendent at this time throughout the state, and I think it earlier, Amity did not. Well, that leaves us where we are, but we'll do our best. Was there any questions? We saw the library report, the city engineer report, and the city attorney and planning reports. Were there any questions on those? I have one question I'll ask of you, Mike. It was the Council of Government invoice, and it for the grant administration specialist. It's just the way they build it, so they have a quantity of 752 and a rate of 1. But the description is contract not to exceed $20,000 and hourly not to exceed 94. So I would just ask if they could actually either charge us in a lump sum with a better description or at the hourly rate, because a quantity of 752 doesn't. Unless it's been in. Yeah. Just because moving forward, they'll continue to work on this, so that I think you more easily keep track of what's being done on that.
Okay, I know the individual to talk to, so I'll reach out to them tomorrow, sort that out. Hopefully.
Thank you. Just like another minor thing, but. Yeah. Excuse me. We'll move on to business from the mayor and city councilors. Council President, do you have anything for the good of the board?
I have a couple of things. One is update on the Christmas parade. So the parade is happening still in normal time. Plan is after the parade, Santa is going to go back to the fire hall, where there will be a reception, Santa can meet with kids, there'll be cookies and cocoa from the auxiliary. So that's just kind of a minor tweak on that. The new Christmas decorations have arrived, they're getting strung with lights, the fire department's going on all that. And then Mike, are you working on or checking with ODOT regarding possible lighting down at that intersection with the rice and tree, or is that something we should look into?
I think the mayor
I
can
have
take that
a
one.
call. We're gonna start with PGE. I'm gonna get some more information on who all is in charge of it, not completely on the city, so PGE, then we'll reach out to ODOT and then we'll. Okay. So that we can work on that intersection. Yeah.
Thank you. That was a request directly from the fire department.
Any questions for council today?
One comment, we had the permit for the Christmas parade
Right.
that was done, and then the plan Bill and Chief Yoakum agreed to it was that the fire truck would Santa would approach City Hall and get to City Hall at 6, and then he would like the kids.
Sounds great.
I didn't catch whether he was gonna do another drive-by like he did the last 2 years, or he was actually gonna stop and get out, but we'll sort
You
that
can
out.
kind of like point it. I think it's depending on the flow.
I don't know. I guess we can figure that
We got time, but the permit's in there for us.
out. Okay. That I don't know. I just know it's happening.
I'll just leave it up. Plug it in if need be. Councilor McArthur, do you have anything for the good of the order? Not having that. Councilor Bojorquez?
The mayor and I went around for the businesses to judge the carbon contest. And a lot of the feedback we got is even though the email was distributed to the businesses, the management board was working on it, we didn't know about it. And so we were just trying to brainstorm ideas, how to better feature businesses and let them know about what's going on. You know, one might be just kind of a flyer directly to what the business is, because it can do that. There wasn't a lot of participation, which is kind of sad, but they all said, oh, I wish we would have known that we wanted to. So it's something that we will continue, we'll just try better to reach our businesses. The other thing, during the town hall last week, there was some discussion and questions about eligibility for people joining council and why non-resident might not be eligible. Mayor discussed that it's in our constitution and charter as a city, but I didn't have the ORS in front of me at the time. I looked it up. It's actually it's codified in the law of Oregon state, so it has nothing to do with the actual city voting on whether we will allow a non-resident to be a council member.
It's all from the state, and that's ORS 221 that discusses eligibility for city council. I just wanted to put that out there. Public purposes. That's it.
Any questions? Councilor Dunlap, anything for the good of the order? Okay, mayor's report and final comments. I don't have much. I've been, my Zoom filtering information to me about the public works, the major projects. I'm trying to get some better updates out in the newsletter and the mayor's. I also want to say I'm really happy to see this audience. One of the main goals of our city council was to get more people involved and feel comfortable and willing to show up. So I want to call that out. We have a great audience. On the 10th of November, I'll be going to the small cities meeting of the LOC. I've participated, most of them have been over Zoom. When they switched to in person, I haven't been able to like go be in Detroit at 11 a.m. or this and that, but it's in Willamina. So I'll be able to attend that on the 10th, as well as the city county dinner that evening that's happening. So it's really nice to have somebody in person, networking, just to meet with other small cities and other communities in the county to see what they're doing and share ideas and problem solve. And so I'll bring back any information.
I will be with that as well. I just haven't had, I want to use my notes volume with the works and the job.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay. Yeah.
I was wondering if change the whole town.
Yeah.
I have found out, as far as our government stuff now, the number that I hear on my bill is basically disconnected. You have no way of calling radiology right now. Wait,
So is that ecology? So you're saying a number of ecology doesn't work?
it's disconnected,
Okay, I don't.
basically disconnected.
Is that the one that you found on your bill?
Yeah,
I know that online they've said that they're having like intermittent issues with their phone system.
no, I was pulled out at the dump site. It's been disconnected for a year.
Well, that's at the dump, not.
No, that's the number that's on the bill.
Okay. We can look into it. I mean, we have,
Okay, I just remembered, I wanted to bring that up because it pertains to the whole town. Not just me, but I was trying to find out some information.
Yeah.
And I called the number, you can't go to their office down in the window anymore. So you have no way of getting hold of them that I know of.
I can reach out to Dave. He's the one that's presented the race before. I'll see if there's a better number or something that the council.
Yeah, here, they change it on the bill.
I'll make that comment to him as well.
can you remind me also, are they due to come in January? Or we?
No,
We got,
I think it's.
we got all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, it was 2 years.
But they usually still come to report, so. Okay, that's fine. Is there anything else for the good of the board? No. Okay,
Thank you for the.
yeah,
Motion to adjourn.
sorry. No. You all heard it, we got a second, okay, we got a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please signify by saying no. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all. Oh, that's not an interruption, that's important.